Is everybody? Yeah? It's nice to be here. We have been gone, as many of you know, for the last several weeks. It has been a wonderful time of, I call it TMI, travel, meditation, and inspiration. It's been wonderful. So thank you to everyone who have been here in our absence, who have held down the fort, carried on the light. It is so wonderful to come back. We are so blessed by what we have here. There aren't very many communities like this in the world, but in the Ananda work, there's only so many. You can count on two hands, and we're just blessed. I was so grateful to be able to come back. You know, travel is a great thing. You go out and you see how much you really have at home. It's like Dorothy says in The Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home, and it's wonderful to be back. So I'd like to begin by reading from Whispers from Eternity. And this is number 54. Volumes of thy Savior voice resound through the loudspeaker of every loving heart. The voice of thy wisdom roams through the ether of space, seeking everywhere hearts that are tuned to ecstasy. Sadly, thy warning sermons pass unheard by souls deafened with the static of sense pleasures. O divine broadcaster, tune our souls, long distracted by the static of our indifference. Fine-tune us with the delicate touch of soul perception. Grant us the privilege of hearing thy magic melodies in the ecstasy of divine awakening. Om. Peace. Amen. Well, our reading this morning is a very good reminder, the topic of how democratic is truth. And sitting here in church today, it's probably a pretty safe bet that we can talk about truth. We can talk about the teachings of this path. But it's a sensitive thing. And it really requires us to really tune in real deeply and listen to what is the opening there, looking at the body language, the words, how much can we really share in a given moment. Being part of Ananda for over 25 years, I remember first moving to Ananda Village in Northern California and meeting lots of families. We had about 300 people living there, a lot of families, and watching these children being raised in different households. And here these children, as they were growing up, you know, they were surrounded in their own families by the path and the teachings, but then even as soon as they stepped out their door, they were surrounded by it, even in the community. You know, they couldn't really escape it. And then if they went to school there, which many did, we have a wonderful system of teaching education for life, then they were totally absorbed in it. But then at a certain point when they become a certain age, you see them wanting to branch out. You see them wanting to leave and explore the world and see for themselves, what have they learned all these years? And the Education for Life system is a beautiful system, the balancing of the physical, the mental, the spiritual. And it's been so beautiful to watch them go out and see, and they discover themselves how strong they really are, how they've really developed themselves on all these levels. But then now that they're in their mid-20s, because I've been with Ananda over 25 years, we're watching them now as young adults choosing to come back to Ananda, choosing to come back to the path. And it's so interesting. And some of the parents have shared with us confidentially just some stories that their children have come back and said, you know, I don't really know these teachings on a certain level. Why didn't you tell me this? You know, and the parents, you know, just watching them, some of them were my really close friends, just watching, it was a sensitive thing. They had to really be careful how they were raising their children, not wanting to impose these teachings, but allowing them to feel maybe on a deeper level the vibration. What's the vibration that they were experiencing? And didn't necessarily have to be in words and the teachings. We have a dear friend who doesn't live in a community. She lives out in the Midwest, and she would love to be a part of a community like this, but she doesn't have that support, that satsang as we call it. And so she would turn to her family, and she wanted to share this with her family, but there was only so much receptivity there, and especially with her children. Well, she found her daughter in particular not very interested at all. Well, this summer, her daughter, she's grown up now, she's in her 20s, she had the opportunity to travel to Europe to further her career. And so she was going to Rome, and we know her quite well. And we said, well, you know, Ananda actually has a center, an international center in Assisi. If you find yourself homesick or you need any support, feel free to go up to Assisi. They are your family. You're part of our family. This is one large family. You're connected. No, you can go up there. And besides, Assisi's a beautiful city. For those who haven't been there, it's home of St. Francis. It's gorgeous. It's up on a hill. It's medieval. It's just lovely. Well, we find during her travels in Europe that she does end up going to Assisi, and then her plans were then to go to Florence and continue traveling. Well, we get an email and we Skype with some friends in Assisi, and they said, oh, we met your niece. She's wonderful. And in fact, she's decided not to go on to Florence, and she's staying here even longer. And then she ended up taking the very, very sacred vow of even discipleship. And so here she, of her own, came across, and found this of her own. This was from her. Swami Kriyananda, there's a wonderful story told of him when he first came to the path. He was so enthusiastic about it, and he was asked to do some yoga postures at a conference in Beverly Hills. And there were a lot of people there that were very intelligent, but also not very, I don't know if they were atheists or they just were non-believers. And so there he's doing these yoga postures, and then afterwards he was confronted by a man who was starting to ask him specific questions about yoga philosophy. And Swami's very smart. Swami Kriyananda was a very smart man. He didn't let up, he just met him right there. And in fact, he said, I'm just going to give him everything I have because I am so enthusiastic about this and I believe in this. And so he went even on to say that he watched Yogananda perform miracles. And, it didn't, the conversation really didn't go anywhere. It was just on that level. Well, a few days later, Swami Kriyananda met with Yogananda. And Yogananda said, by the way, when you're talking with skeptics, it's better not to talk about miracles. And then as a little side note, Swami Kriyananda said, well, how do you know, sir? And Yogananda said to Swami Kriyananda, I know every thought you think. Wow. Well, our other topic, concentration, I always love to tie the two together. How democratic is truth? How does that work with our affirmation today? Concentration. What happens in meditation? We concentrate. What happens when we meditate deeply? We become still, and then we know. And then we begin to tune in, and then we know when are those appropriate moments when we can share. When are those moments when we can verbally get a little bit deeper besides an obvious setting like this. As I mentioned earlier, we took some time off, and at the first part of our time off, we took 2 weeks apart so that we could really go deeper in our spiritual practices. I wanted to concentrate more deeply, and in the middle of our heat wave, we've been having some wonderful weather here. I decided to escape to the coast and went to Gerhard, which is a wonderful place. There's nothing there. It's just north of Seaside. Absolutely nothing there. It was perfect for a quiet time away. But as I was checking in, I was obviously by myself, and the woman checking me in said, oh, so what are you doing here? Is this a vacation? Well, I was so excited because this was really starting my time away. I said, no, I'm in seclusion. And then I can't believe I said that because normally I'm very discreet. And she said, seclusion? I said, yes. She goes, I've done that before. And then the conversation just changed. It was wonderful to take that time away, to take that time, to take the practices deeper. So often you think even here we are serving, we're trying to share these teachings, we have all the time in the world, to do our practices. But it was so wonderful to have a period of time that was unstructured. And it doesn't need to be, we had the opportunity to take 3 weeks. It can be a week, it can be a day, it can be an hour, whatever time it is, but to go deeper in meditation, because what happens, again, be still and know. And I'm reminded of 2 things that Yogananda said. He said, it's in the moments, take care of the moments, and then they'll take care of the years. In the moments, what are we sharing? There's a friend that always says, you can be a secret agent for Divine Mother. You don't necessarily have to articulate the teachings, but you can share the vibrations. What are you sharing in those moments? Are you sharing that love? Are you sharing that kindness? When the woman said, oh, I've done that before, what was I sharing then in that moment? Was I just sharing love and regard and gratitude? Or like, yeah, right, yeah, what are we sharing in all those moments? And then Yogananda was asked, towards the end of his life, probably one of his devotees could sense that something was going to be changing. He said, Master, which is a term of endearment for a teacher, for Yogananda, what will we do when you're gone? And he said, only love can take my place. And again, the more we spend time in the stillness, in that deep concentration, we open ourselves up to something deeper, something more than we can even share. If we have the opportunity to share, of course, and there's settings that are appropriate, but never forgetting those moments. It's those little moments that resonate, and they string together like beads in a necklace. All those moments, everywhere we're turning, if we're sharing God's love, His joy, His peace, and all those deepen, all those become more of who we are, the more we practice our meditation, the more we concentrate. And we're so blessed again to have a center like this where we can come together and take classes and come together and share our experiences. So Daiva will also be sharing this morning. It's truly a joy to be back. It's very special. So blessings to all of you. Come, we've got lots of meditation classes. I saw the schedule. We have a busy summer still. Come take a class. Come be in community and satsang. Let's share the adventure of discovering who we are together. So blessings.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all. And I, too, am deeply grateful to be back with our spiritual family here. Thank you for sharing that. The Indian scriptures say that there is no blessing in all the three worlds, the physical world, the heavenly realms, the more subtle realms than that. There's no blessing comparable to the blessings of a true guru, a representative from the divine that comes into this world to help each one of us discover for ourselves the power and presence of Spirit as our own reality. It's how democratic is truth is a fun topic because everybody is someplace along the path of awakening. Yogananda at one point said, everybody's on the spiritual path. Everybody's on the mountain. Some people are going down the mountain. Some people are going up the mountain. Some people are just sitting there. But everybody's on the path. Everybody yearns for the same thing. Who's heard the song, Because I'm Happy? If you haven't, get on YouTube and turn it on. It is one of the sweetest things. Everybody is looking for happiness. Everybody is looking for happiness. We're all reaching inside to find the conditions that set that free. Now, because our relationship to understanding can only happen within the parameters, within the state in which we are, there are levels of understanding that are just simply not available to us at any given time. And it's inappropriate to try and foist information and understanding at inappropriate times on other people's consciousness, on people. We raised a daughter, and I think of her, and I think of the times when she would want to know information or be curious about things, and I'd have to really dumb down the answer because she couldn't grapple with a really complex layer of understanding. But as she grew, in fact, there's a very sweet story. This is of, I believe, Corrie ten Boom. The source isn't that important. This young girl was talking to her dad, and she had heard about sexuality. And she said, "Daddy, could you tell me about this?" And he said, "Honey, would you go over there?" He completely diverted the conversation. He said, "Honey, would you go over there and get that heavy suitcase and carry it upstairs?" And she looked at him and said, Daddy, I'm too small for that. I can't do that. And he said, well, it's the same thing with some information. Some information you're just too small to carry, so I will carry it for you until you're strong enough to handle it yourself. And that's really how it is. There was a great sage, a very, very wise man, and he'd read the scriptures, and he had developed a very strong intellect. And he was talking with a saint, and he was telling this man about all the subtle understandings he had about this one scripture, one scriptural passage. And he was telling all these different layers, and he had like 14 or 15 different subtle layers of understanding. And the saint said, well, that's very impressive. He said, I know, and he had these credentials as this very wise man throughout India. And the wise man said to the saint, so are you impressed? And he said, well, yeah, I am. And he said, well, do you understand it? And he said, well, I think so. And then he listed off another 42 different subtleties of understanding. Truth is subtle. Truth is remarkable. And we often don't understand. One of the funniest things that I ever hear is people come to Ananda and they go away kind of going, they're all too happy. Because we are. It's fun to watch. Happiness, Yogananda brought teachings to help us experience the joy of God from inside ourselves, to fulfill that yearning for happiness that we all feel, that we'd like to have unconditioned. He brought 4 practices. Hong Sa, practice of concentration, which is one of our topics today, a practice of mastering our own energy, a practice of inner communion, and a practice of getting rid of the things that hold us back, Kriya itself. And he said these 4 things plus devotion, they will bring you quickly into the experience of divine joy, of ecstasy. But sometimes, all we're trying to do, that's too big a leap. And, we read about, fill me with the divine ecstasy, the nectar of God's presence. And we go, I'm just trying to find a little bit more sanity in my life. That would be enough for today. It's too much of a leap. And it's okay, because there's no reason to try and take on the whole thing. Just the next step, just the next step. And it's very sweet. We have taught meditation for many decades now. And you can take somebody who's never practiced meditation, who has no sense of how to get that feeling of happiness, and have them practice Hong Sa meditation for just 3, 4, 5 minutes. And you'll watch as they do it, if they really do it, if they really concentrate here and really follow and really are in it, you'll watch just naturally. There'll be this little smile that will start to creep onto their faces. It's universal, because it's our nature to be joyful. Joy is who we are. Truth is funny, because life, the Bible says, my ways are not your ways. And there's a very sweet story again from the Indian scriptures. Narayan and Narada. Narayan is the Lord, and Narada is his disciple. And they're walking along, and Narada, as usual, is asking the Lord questions about how it really works. And the night is getting on, and they don't have a place. They're just wandering. They don't have a place to sleep. And so Narayan says, let's go find a place to sleep. And so they go to the home of a wealthy, wealthy, wealthy person. And they knock on the door. And Narada says to the wealthy man, he says, we have no place to sleep this evening. We have not had a meal. We're wondering, would you open your home to us and feed us and care for us and give us a place to sleep this evening? And the rich man looked at them and said, you beggars, you're all alike. How dare you come here asking, what I have is mine. I've earned it myself. How dare you be gone? And Narayan just looked at him and said, may you get what you deserve. And as they're starting to walk away, this messenger comes rushing up, and they overhear him, and he says, you've just won a lottery. Millions of dollars are now yours. And Narada is very puzzled by this, but he doesn't say anything. And so they go on, and they go to the home of a very, very, very poor man. And all this poor man has is just his little cow. And they knock on the door, and they say, would you take us in? And he says, oh, yes, I'd be honored to. And he makes them at home, and he goes out and he milks the cow, and he takes what little he gets, and he gives it to them, and he presents them with just this little tiny piece of bread. That's all he has, a little bit of rice. And in the morning, they get up and again, he's so gracious with what little he has. And as they're leaving, again, Narayan turns to him and says, may you get what you deserve. And as they're leaving, somebody comes rushing up and says, oh, I'm so sorry to tell you, but your cow has just died. It was the only thing he had in the whole world. It was his friend, it was his food source, it was companion. And Narada just simply looked at Narayan and said, Lord, what is this about? And Narayan smiled so sweetly. He said, the wealthy man was under the belief and the delusion that his wealth would bring him happiness. And so I gave him the blessing of increased wealth so he would quickly learn that this is not the source of happiness, that it becomes an increasing burden with time. He said, but what about the other man and his cow? He said, he is so close to freedom. He is so close to absolute liberation and wholeness in spirit where all things come from inside, and his last attachment to this world was that cow. And so in the loss of that cow, the last vestige of attachment to Maya, to delusion, is gone, and he's free. We don't know. We don't know how it works. God's words are, my ways are not your ways. But if we're really seeking freedom, if we're really seeking joy, we have to cooperate with what life brings us. We have to open ourselves to it. We have to trust that what comes to us is for our blessing, for our good. And as people who are seeking truth and seeking to be channels for goodness into this world, we have to be willing to see life as it really is, not as we wish it would be. There's a cute story. This is how I first heard it, and I've had somebody try and adjust my understanding of it subtly, and I haven't picked it up yet. So I'm going to tell you how I first heard it. It's close enough. Swami Kriyananda was talking with Paramhansa Yogananda, his guru, his teacher, and he was saying, sir, I have heard that there are great masters on Mount Shasta, right? I mean, Mount Shasta is a power place, and a lot of people go there, and he had heard that there were masters there, spiritual masters there, and Yogananda just shook his head and said, no, just aliens. We don't know. You know, there is so much going on that's just not obvious to us all. If we can relax and begin to cooperate, Yogananda suggested that we should grow physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally every day. We should work on developing ourselves throughout our lifetime so that we don't become psychological antiques, so we don't kind of exhaust ourselves needlessly through apathy and lack of involvement. And I've decided, a friend of mine turned me on to this brain testing program, brain development program called Lumosity. And it's there to help kind of people develop different aspects of their mental capacity. And I decided to take it on. I used to use the crossword puzzle and stuff, but I don't get the paper anymore. So I started taking it on. And it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating what you discover if you do the thing every day. And I often will play extra games and stuff because I'm fascinated at what happens. And what I've discovered is that there's a certain kind of baseline that I reach, and fairly quickly. And I don't have to do a whole lot. You know, once I've hit that, I don't have to do a whole lot to maintain it. But if I sit down and I go after that, and Ganga Mata comes in and talks to me, or I've got something else going, or the phone goes off, or some little blip on the computer shows up, and I lose my concentration, I find that I fall way below the bar. And I also find that if I really want to develop and strengthen and feel the expansiveness that comes with increased capacity, that what I have to do is I have to really concentrate. But that if I really concentrate, the metabolic changes, the neural pathways, the interconnections actually also develop. And it's true not only mentally, it's true emotionally, it's true spiritually. We should, as we go through the day, we should consciously and with concentration connect with those around us and feel the light of God pouring through us in blessing. We should try and feel empathy for other people. Empathy isn't an outward action, it's an inner experience of somebody else's reality. But we should work every day. We should do our energizations. We should work, and we should let go of the need. You know, one of the funny things also that I see at everywhere, but Ananda is not immune from it, is the thought that other people should behave the way we want them to so that we can be happy. Oh, Daiva and Gangamata, they didn't treat me very well. I'm now got a justification for being mad. Or so-and-so, how could a devotee behave like that? The gift that the Masters brought wasn't that somebody else will behave the way you want them to. It's to find under any condition the source of joy inside yourself so that you become a channel for light, a channel for love, a channel for goodness under every condition. That's the simple truth. If you can hang on to that, everything else will be revealed in its own time. If you can concentrate on that, on the source of joy, on the place of divine contact, on the presence of goodness in every moment, no matter what it looks like, the Masters will have done their job and their lives will have been meaningful, and your own life will become increasingly beautiful and rich. And together, with that, we can change this world. We can bring the light of God and blessings into this world where it's so deeply needed. Let's take a moment of silence together.